Dear colleagues and audience, please let me first say thanks for Anna and Yari for organizing this session and accepting my paper. My presentation has its roots in my partly published and defended PhD dissertation, which investigates the economic and social relationship of two important Pannonian cities, Aquincum and Brigetio, with their agricultural hinterlands. My present paper will concentrate on how the natural environment and distances affected settlement pattern and location, and which areas of the rural landscape were more resilient in economic crises. The studied area is a diverse terrain with low mountains, hills and plains, and is situated in the northeastern part of Roman Pannonia, which is the middle region of present-day Hungary. Already before the Roman conquest in the 1st century AD, this landscape had been inhabited by two tribes, the Eravisci and Asali, who made great impact on many aspects of provincial life in the first 2 centuries. The same impact can be observed in case of the rural settlements, which are the subjects of my paper. From the 1st century to the 4th century AD, the main type of rural settlement in the region was the Roman village, the vicus. They were generally not as extensive and Romanized as in the western provinces. They were loosely structured, unplanned settlements with only a few Roman-style buildings, as you can see on the right with green, but a lot of semi-subterranean pit houses, as you can see on the left. These villages mainly had a profile in agriculture, producing surplus for the nearby cities and the army. They received their function thanks for the economic pressure which arose from the establishment of Roman authority in Pannonia. As the emperor was the sole proprietor of land in the province, communal property became private possession, and land tax was introduced to cover the expenses of the state, in focus of which was mainly the stationed military. From 41 AD to the end of the 2nd century AD, the nominal strength of the military steadily increased, just as the wheat demand to maintain them. In increasing studies, like the ones concerning Lower Germany and the two Mercias, the high importance of a centralized interprovincial military supply is debated, and a more regional supply system is assumed until the 4th century AD. In my PhD dissertation I also came to the same conclusion in case of Pannonia. A centralized military supply is invisible. Interprovincial supply lines are attested only in case of such military crises, like the Marcomannic Wars at the end of the 2nd century. To study how the rural settlement pattern adapted to the needs of a regional supply of perishables, I created a GIS database which integrated 297 sites with their archaeological assemblages and 486 inscriptions. In the past years, I developed and published the method through which I was able to define the location of the Roman villages of the hinterland of Aquincum and Brigetio. The primary basis of the definition was the presence of regional and imported pottery and traces of Roman-style buildings on the archaeological sites. This method has its roots in the assumption that villages, which were functioning as rural centers, were somehow integrated into the regional and interprovincial market through the cities. The stronger the social and economic ties they maintained with the cities, the more likely they had wide marketing networks and Roman-style buildings. In the publications through location analysis, I statistically proved that the defined 58 Roman villages (vici) are better situated in the landscape than the other known places. This means that these villages evolved in areas which were the most suitable for growing crops. My calculations were based on present soil, hydrological, and elevation data. The other result I would like to concentrate on is linked to the consumption of energy by moving in the physical landscape. Since Walter Cristallo's well-known model and John Bintliff's paper into ancient marketing, Studies came to the conclusion that all levels of the settlement hierarchy are bound by travel constraints, creating a regular system of spacing between the different levels. This regularity in location was detected among the defined Roman villages in the studied region, into which the military fortifications and cities could be integrated. The nearest neighbors of the Roman Vici were about 3,000 meters away, as the crow flies, or slightly more than an hour, when distances were measured on the actual terrain. According to the work of Michael Chisholm, this predicted village action radius can best be compared to the suitable distances between an intensively cultivated plot and a dwelling, suggesting intensive land use in the Roman era. This way it could be concluded that the observed regularity in the settlement pattern of the hinterland of Aquincum and Brigetio developed as the result of a somewhat planned settling which was deeply rooted in the daily agricultural practice. The other distance which I could recognize in the settlement pattern is based on the dispersion of the epigraphic material. According to the cited study of John Bindley, cities could only directly exploit and control an area within their day return distance, which in the pre-mechanized world was about 18.5 km in radius. My study showed that the inscriptions mentioning military persons or the urban upper class concentrated within this area. This suggests that the direct hinterland of Aquincum did not exceed the day return access, and villages within this radius maintained stronger social and economic ties with the city. My doctoral dissertation and publications dealt with the question of settlement survival and resilience only a little. Therefore, I expanded this study in this paper. The first step in answering why settlement locations unchanged between the 1st and the 4th century AD was to create a GIS model which integrated all past statistical data into one, reconstructing the most possible agricultural landscape of the Roman era. I used 6 physical landscape features: elevation, slope, aspect, solar radiation, soil and landform to create a landscape suitability map which showed how much a certain area represents the direct vicinity of a Roman settlement in the region. The map was classified along 5 classes from ideal, brown, to unavailable, green. This suitability map could be compared to the land use categories recorded on the second military survey of the Habsburg Empire from the 19th century. This made it clear that the suitability map, and thus the vicinity of Roman villages, most probably reflect the possible location of historical plowland. However, this result must be handled with great caution, as soil availability was not recorded in areas which were covered by forests. In spite of this, Roman villages and settlement sites tend to be found around potentially available agricultural lands. As settlements were loose in Roman times, archaeological sites do not necessarily reflect past reality. Therefore, I created and used settlement places instead of sites for analysis, the method of which I described in my paper from 2017. This way, not only the survival of a certain site, but complete site complexes could be examined. According to this view, 29 settlement places survived into the 2nd–3rd century, following the military crisis of the Marcomannic Wars of the 2nd century. The most surviving places, 17, were located in the direct hinterland of Aquincum, other 3 near the 2 main roads, the Limes road along the Danube and the Diagonal road. Only 9 of the surviving settlement places were located further inland. This suggests that cultural circumstances played a key role in settlement survival and made village communities flexible also in economic crisis. This did not significantly change in the late Roman period, when 21 of the 31 surviving places were within the direct reach of Aquincum or along a major road. Only 10 of the surviving places were located further inland. But what was the cause for the survival of the settlement places deep in the rural landscape? The answer can be found with the suitability map described above. Based on the proportion of ideal and suitable land in the 1.5-kilometer radius of the villages were distributed into 5 classes from 1, which was the best, to 5, representing the worst agricultural prospect. The same classification was applied to the predicted territory of the villages and received the map, which can be seen on the slide. Based on the suitability model, it seems that except for the one near Sova, those places survived further from the cities and the main roads, which had better prospects in employing the most resources for agricultural production. As the conclusion of this paper, I would like to highlight the main results of the study. The rural settlement pattern of the studied hinterlands has a strong tendency towards regularity, reflecting a typical village system around 3,000 meters between nearest neighbors. Their return distance must have made a great impact on the social and economic relations between Aquincum and its hinterland. Access to the city, main road, or available plowland was the key to survive military and economic crises. And I would like to say thank you for your kind attention.